Welcome to Conversations with Healers, a podcast and video interview series that features intimate, soulful, and cozy conversations with self-healers and healers. Healer to healer, we dive into all aspects of self-healing and healing, and being and becoming a healer. I am Damla. I am a healer and the host of this podcast, and I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation. If you are new to this podcast, please take a moment to subscribe so that you can be aware of new episodes. I also invite you to visit adropofom.com, adropofom.com, where I share a lot of free resources for self-healing and healing, and you can take a free quiz to find out what your energetic wounds are and how they may show up in your life. Discovering what your wounds are is the first step in healing them. I hope you enjoy this episode. There is one more thing I would like to share with you before you listen to this episode. I created a wonderful container to help you heal your energetic wounds and activate the infinite light and potential of your inner children. It is a crystal energy healing membership called Chakra Bliss Vault. Every month you will receive 3 new crystal healing sessions. Plus, you'll immediately have access to my entire energy healing recording library when you sign up. The membership is really affordable and will continue to be so. You can find out more about it at adropofom.com, adropofom.com. I invite you to make healing your energetic wounds and connecting with your inner children a priority and invest in your well-being by becoming a Chakra Bliss Vault member. Hello everyone, this is Damla and I have here with me a very special guest that I'm excited to talk with. We have Amy Hopkins. Amy is a registered nurse, a licensed massage therapist, yoga teacher, speaker, cold plunge and dipping enthusiast and guide, which we're going to talk in depth about. And she's the owner of Saltwater Mountain Company, which hosts community cold dips, cold exposure retreats, educational conversations on the benefits of cold therapy. Amy's mission is to empower women, support mental health, and build community, all of which I love. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Damla.
So before I talk about like how I found you and how we got connected, I really want to start with you and your story. Can you give us in like big brush strokes what brought you to here in this moment in your life doing what you do?
Yeah, thank you. I grew up in Maine, so I've always sort of identified with the New England cold person, growing up in a cold community. Lived in New England most of my life, Maine and New Hampshire, and Colorado as well. I have a love for the West. I have a love for the mountains, and really have embraced living on the ocean and in the mountains and try to be in either of those places as often as possible. I came to my career started as a nurse. I was a labor and delivery nurse and always knew I wanted to work with women and work with birth. What I didn't know is that I would be doing that sort of also in a metaphorical way going forward. But so I worked with pregnant women through their births for a long time. And then I became a massage therapist. I got a little bit, I was a little bit disappointed with the schedule of being a nurse and working um, nighttime hours, working a stressful schedule, and just felt like the care and the therapy I wanted to give these women, the space I wanted to hold for them, and what I wanted to do for them needed something else. And that's what drew me to massage therapy. And then I dove fully into that and had a thriving massage practice for about 20 years and built a wellness studio out of that. Kind of after Colorado, came back home to Maine, built a family and a wellness studio. I taught some yoga, I taught pregnant women, I taught childbirth classes, and embraced pregnant women in massage and often their families. And also, my practice grew and I served a lot of people, men and women, mostly women. And then fast forward to COVID and such a milestone where I had to close that business, had to close that um, wellness studio, reincarnated it a little bit, and then passed it on to a friend and colleague. And all during that time, post COVID or during slash post, I came to the water because I was grieving, and I realized there's not much to do. People go into the ocean New Year's Day. This was 2021. And I went with a girlfriend and we went and jumped in the ocean. And it was one of those experiences where I didn't look back. Something happened inside of me. I knew this was the thing people did, but I did not understand the depth of the healing energy of the ocean, of the cold, of doing it while you were feeling all sorts of loss and grief. And ever since I did it, I felt that positive relief and the benefits so strongly that I just kept going. And I, all of those things from my past, my background, felt like they were present when I was started to bring people and help lead them into the water too. And so it felt like just a perfect evolutionary step.
Mm. It's interesting to me as I'm listening to you, where my mind is going is the moment you said you needed to close down your business, and I felt that the loss of that, and probably the other pieces of loss that it awakens in us, the unprocessed losses, that kind of thing. And then immediately where I went is I just read this book. It's called The Little Paris Bookshop, but unrelated. The hero in the book goes through loss, and then he just finds himself by the ocean, just dipping into the ocean every day. And he says something that stayed with me, which is like he found the immensity of the ocean was the only thing that could hold the grief, like that was much bigger than him. And and the fact that you're coming from that almost midwifery
Yeah.
existence into going through the body and then coming out to almost like a rebirth experience through the salt water is very, very poignant. Um, so the reason I wanted to do this is I've been pretty interested in cold exposure and
Mhm.
cold dipping, and more my story sort of intertwines with yours, but in a different way. Like I was aware of it for a long time. Like I started to do cold showers at home, and then like I got more and more into it, realizing how much benefit there is for mental health, for physical health. And I feel like we're going to go into beyond the spiritual health of
Yeah.
the things. But for me, I believe in 2018, I had a past life regression.
Mm.
And in that past life regression, I'm a German woman. And I saw myself, and I'm not a particularly happy German woman. And then towards the end of my life, I saw the scene of myself dipping into a river
Mm.
with other women.
Mm.
And I just saw them like giggling and joking and just the community of it. And I'm just out of water and I'm watching it in that past life. And this thought comes to me, which is like, why didn't I do this earlier in that past life? And so tell me about this. So you started this on your own. What led you to, I know you do community cold dips where we live. I live in New Hampshire. I think you're
Oh,
in Maine, but we're pretty
yeah.
close. And I know you do pretty regular community ocean cold dips. How did that come about, the bringing of women together?
Yeah. So it's interesting what you say about the book that you read because it's exactly how I felt while I was going through my own grief. And I felt the cold, and not just the cold of the ocean, but the intensity of the waves hitting my body was it was an intensity that matched the grief. And I speak about this sometimes that the intensity of the grief of the wave and the cold matched the intensity of the grief, unlike anything else could. And it was very balancing, it was very nurturing. It felt like, oh, here's my therapy. Here is where I'm understood. And I think with so much going on at that time, so much was compiling and it was hard to process. So that was what really got me, hooked me in. And the fact that I went with a friend, right? So it started as that. The two of us went, these two women, right? Two middle-aged women go to the ocean. It is very common. That is a very common thing. And then I started telling my friends about it. And then they wanted to join me. And then their friends wanted to join. And then their friends wanted to join. And I thought, I'm going to make an Instagram page because I want to post when I'm going. And we have this beautiful beach that is not crowded when it's cold out. And there is parking. And it is beautiful, maybe more beautiful in the winter. The sun rises directly in front of it, so it's sort of a safer, covey ocean beach. So I put these out on Instagram and Facebook, and they just started to grow. And the ocean is an attractor, right? The energy, the energy pulls and the moon pulls, right? And I think there is a sense of not just calm that we get at the ocean, but a sense of belonging. And everyone coming out of that time was in isolation, were missing their friends, missing their family, maybe have lost family, maybe have lost a job, etc., and coping with how to raise a family through a pandemic and. So it was really a collective energy that I I knew I was gifted at holding space and creating that pull to gather. And the ocean helped. The cold helped. It was something exciting and different and challenging in a way that felt like if I'm going to be in this challenge of a pandemic, let's go for it. Let's do something wild because something has to counteract this crazy. And so let's do something equally as crazy, but with it feels so good, equally and opposite.
Yes. Which brings me to when I first met you, I went to one of those community dips with a friend
Yep.
who I met serendipitously, and she actually told me about you when I told her I was interested in trying this. Um, and I remember this was in February.
Yes.
Last February, so we're standing around at that beautiful beach, just sort of shivering a little bit even before we dipped. And then you asked who was there the first time, and someone there raised their hand, and this woman said, are we supposed to do a special breathing? Like how do we do the Wim Hof breathing? Like she was really nervous.
I remember this.
And
Yeah.
then you were very calm and you said, "What's your name?" And she said, I don't know what that was. I think she said something like Nancy. And then you said, "Nancy, you're just gonna take Nancy breaths." And that was my favorite part about that.
So
Just
glad you, yeah.
instantly put me at ease. And you were like, just go in as long as you need to. Don't even have to do it that much. Just listen to your body. So it felt very, very supportive. And everyone there was being supportive of each other. Um, that said, I have to say, when I told my friends about this, they were like, Damla, you're crazy. Like, how can you even think about going into the ocean in
Yeah.
February? Um, and then at that time, I had also been thinking about getting a home tub as well, like an outdoor, because we have a lot of winter here.
Mhm.
The water gets cold outside. So I had experienced that as well. So my experience with both, like when friends ask me about it, is it sucks as much as you think it's gonna suck. Especially the first the first few moments. I
Yeah.
remember walking into the ocean. It was a particularly wavy day,
Mhm.
and water was knee high for me. And then suddenly, like this big wave just hit me all the way to my chest with the cold, and I was like, "Oh."
Mhm.
Um, but there is something to be said about how you feel afterwards. It's like this, like you mentioned, the bigger the wave, the more it matches your inner intensity or the intensity of what you're going
Yeah.
through. There's
Yeah.
something about that, like you intended this big, beautiful thing, and you go in and you go out and you're proud of yourself. You're slightly delirious from the cold and
Yeah. Yes.
tell me about that. Like,
Yes.
um, the intensity of it, the part that sucks.
The part that sucks. The part that sucks is so conditioned in us, right? We have a negativity bias, and also we are humans that are programmed to safely be scared of the cold. So the negativity bias is just cold is uncomfortable, and we don't like uncomfortable, and some people more than others. So especially those that don't love the cold, deliberately putting yourself in it, why would you do that? Right? We're about homeostasis. We're about maintaining steady. Why would we do this? Why would we deliberately put ourselves into discomfort? It's got to be about the reward, right? There has to be an upside, or we wouldn't do it. And the upside, there's a lot of things you can do with upsides, right? You can go for a jog and get a runner's high, and there's all sorts of wonderful rituals that people do all the time because they feel good. But there is something special about this that is instantaneous. And what's interesting is, chemically, we have adrenaline and noradrenaline in the brain, being released in the body, and that is going to give us a high, and that helps dopamine release, and that is going to give us the reward feeling, right? That feeling of like, wow, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel like I could go do that again, or I could do anything. Um, but we're not we're not feeling like, oh, I have all this adrenaline in my, I don't have all these these catecholamines in my brain. That's not what we're thinking about. We're just feeling like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I feel strong. I feel energized. I feel like I'm tingling all over my body. And that's what we're feeling. So it sucks in a way that we know how good it's going to feel, that we're willing to be uncomfortable. And really only the first few times, because once you do it enough, you are so trained in the opposite direction that it actually is something you're looking forward to. It actually becomes, in a way, a comfort. I can't wait to get into the water. because I know how I'm going to feel is up here. How I know how I feel when I walk in is still here, but how I know I'm going to feel is totally beating that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. What this reminds me of is I often think I teach meditation, I teach EFT tapping, I teach people how to partner with crystals. And I often think like if people got the if they could savor like this one big, huge, deep meditation with a crystal just once, I swear they would want to come back again and
Yes,
again and again.
yes,
That kind of.
get it.
And then the other piece this is reminding me of is, of course, we are salt water. We are liquid crystalline, mostly liquid crystalline beings, and ocean being the ocean has a lot of salt and is another type of crystal. So, and of course, water is another form of the
Mhm.
crystalline realm. So there's a lot going on there.
Yes.
Um, I think though, I want to jump into you were one of the first people who I knew would carry this ocean experience into their homes. Like I
Mhm.
saw you, I still see you going into you have a trough, which I have now as well.
Oh, good.
My daughter named her Delilah, so her name is Delilah. She's a
Oh, I love this.
100-gallon metal tank
Mhm.
that actually was made for cows and horses to drink water from, but
Yeah.
I
Yes.
do
Why
dip
not?
in her. So I see you getting like super comfortable in yours, and you're like shooting videos and talking to the sunset or sunrise. And I'm like, I'm just, struggling to just go in and out, maybe stay like longer than 40 minutes. So how does that happen? Is there progression to it? Like how long do you stay in yours? And what is the difference between the home and the ocean for you?
Great question. So they're both salt water. I just put Epsom salt in the hose water in the tub in my backyard. The salt water is very healing, right? So there is that. I am an extrovert, and the community dips fill my soul. They actually feed me. In addition to the ocean, the people, being around the people feeds me. And I'm not alone in that, but that describes me. And what sometimes is harder for me, but sometimes equally as enjoyable, but I don't do it as much, is the solitude, the alone time. I love it when I'm in it and I can get into it and I really need it. So being outside in my tub by myself in nature in quiet is therapy and is a perfect complement to what I get a lot, which I feel very fortunate that I do. I have a lot of people in my life and I'm lucky because of that. But it gives me solitude, it gives me nature, it gives me meditation. And honestly, it's sort of funny because I love to bring my camera in there and talk, right? And because in a way I'm not giving myself solitude when I'm doing that. I'm still trying to connect with people. Whoever is listening, right? Whoever's listening.
I listen.
I'm glad. It does feel like I'm talking to people. So but there I still get the solitude and I don't, I go out without my phone as well. But I love the balance it gives me, the two of them, because I like them. I would say equally. But
Mm,
I can say equally because I do them both. If I didn't have the other, I would not be able to say that. I don't think.
yes.
So the home tub, I would say, you adapt to this practice. So the first time someone goes into the cold water, if they're not used to that, then you can just imagine that it would make sense that they do not stay in very long, right? Your body isn't is used to it. Your cells in your body, your brown fat cells, they have not adapted. And so you are more prone to hypothermia. So you want to just test the waters, and there's no magic time. It's like that woman, taking her own breath. It's like, I recommend not timing it. I recommend feeling it, right? See what it feels like. Exhale when you're there. Notice your breath. Are you judging? Are you competitive with yourself? Or are you just in there to really embrace it? And the first time, probably not. You're screaming or laughing or panicking or swearing, and also just swearing that you still hate the cold and, cursing whoever made you do this, which should be no one except yourself. I should add that. Um, so I love to step into it. I breathe every time. Doesn't matter if the water's 50 degrees or 38 degrees. I have to exhale significantly when I'm getting in there. I would say I don't even time myself, but I think, anywhere from 3 to 12 minutes, I'm probably in there. Um, Sometimes less, sometimes more, especially right now. Come February when it's truly a bucket of ice, icy water. I wouldn't advise people to stay in longer than a few minutes, but I just pay attention, and that it helps you develop that inner knowing of, oh yeah, it's time to get out. And what I do is as soon as I really feel that, I get out. I don't say, well, actually, I think I'll stay in, for another minute. That's, it's sort of like, usually it's a little harder to get out when it starts to feel good. You just don't want it to feel too good. You don't want to be so adapted. Like, that's not the point, because we're not going for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes in the tub. That's not a thing. It's like if you were, lifting a weight at the gym for your bicep, eventually there's going to be a limit you doesn't make sense to go past, because you will injure the tissue. And it's exactly the same for your cells in the cold. It is damaging in a large amount, but really therapeutic in a small amount. And that word is hormesis. There's a word for that.
Yes. So what I'm getting from this is like I started my dipping journey in February, which I think was
Very brave.
great and
Yeah.
also severely limiting for the amount of time I spent in there. So I'm hoping to get to know myself in
Mm.
cold water more. And I think I want to just sort of clarify, and I would love to know your reasons why too, personally. For me, um, I am on this health journey of dealing with a lot of digestive symptoms, and the perimenopause is knocking on the door, and I'm finding my energy dwindling. And I just find myself in this journey of searching for alternative methods. And cold has been one of those that has kept popping up again and again and again for me.
Yeah.
And I am extremely curious about it. Not very motivated about it because my first few experiences were very severe, as I said, back in the middle of the winter. But I am open to it, and I think there's something that feels nourishing there for me. It's funny, I've been talking to another healer today, and she sent me one of her cards, and the card says past, present, and future, and underneath it says future self. I think it's just a little bit of like the future Damla knocking on the door, the future cold
Yes.
adapted version of me.
Yes. You're curious. Like, your body
Yes.
is drawing you to it, or your spirit is drawing you to it, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I am curious. I'm very open to it. And that said, I come from a culture, I grew up in Turkey,
Me too.
and cold is like the biggest nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's like you're not supposed to go around barefoot or like have any
Yeah.
window cracked open in case you like cold is equated with feeling cold, feeling chilled equals you're gonna die kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
mentality.
That's interesting.
So, what is your why?
Yeah.
Personal why, other than the community?
It's a great question. I got my first massage when I was 19, and I was hooked. It was that first experience of alternative complementary medicine. And I've never been that relaxed. I've never been that, I've never felt like something really made sense to me in the way when I got, and it was a very good one, which I'm really grateful for. It probably changed my life, if I'm honest, the course of my career and my passion for health. So it became, when I had that experience, I was like, oh, this is opening up a whole new world for me of sort of what you were saying is like I've always been taking care of myself has always felt like a hobby and not optional. And I just grew to respect the human body so much, not just through nursing school, actually, especially probably not through nursing school, but the compounded education of massage therapy school, because it matched my learning style. It was kinesthetic, it was visual, it was spiritual. It had an element that I hadn't got yet in nursing, and I wasn't getting. And so when I think about all those years of, I wanted to be a massage therapist. I was, and I started a wellness studio. I wanted other people to know how good this can feel. And the touch, the touch of the water, the touch of hands, it's very similar and sort of the healing energy of the sensory, the sensation of that on your body. It wakes something up. It moves your lymph tissue, your lymph around your body. It cleanses you, and I was very much into, um, while I was a massage therapist, right? Eating well and doing seasonal cleanses and really getting in tune with taking care of my body. And this just feels like the next step of that. But it matches, you're talking about perimenopause, it matches my stage of life. There is a reason why most of the people that are drawn to cold water dipping are ages, I would say, 35 to 65. And isn't it interesting that that is also the time when estrogen is declining? And isn't it interesting that we wouldn't know that otherwise? Hasn't been studied, it's not written in books. It's our own wisdom. So I feel like it is a deeply wise ancient ritual, and I trust it. So I really keep doing it because I trust it. And I hear anecdotal stories daily. So I have my own story and the way I feel when I'm in the water and when I get out of the water, but I have women every day, I would say literally every day, tell me in person, text me, message me how grateful they are that they found cold water dipping. And that's everything. I mean, that is women's health, middle age. I love the term midlife midwife. Like that's what I want to be for people is holding that space during this stage of life so that they can trust themselves to feel good.
Would you say that you're a yoga teacher too? And that's sort of, I feel like there was this big, huge wave of everyone doing yoga, and then it became like the women are going towards yoga more and more. And I kind of see the same thing with this.
Yes,
Um, Even though I know there are devoted men cold dippers, but in the community dip, for instance, it was like the vast majority of it was women.
yeah,
There is something to be said, I guess, about like when we find something healing and nourishing, we move towards it because like there's not many other alternatives other than taking a pill for
exactly.
whatever reason. Uh, and I just need to mention, I know that your moon is a Taurus, so that doesn't surprise me that you sort of got mesmerized by the massage thing.
Yeah.
Taurus
Oh,
being
that's so interesting. Yeah.
earth
Yeah.
element and very sensuous, body embodiment representation. And then, of course, you being Gemini, you were like, let me try this too. Let me try nursing for the
Yeah.
intellectual part of it. And then let me try the, cold dipping for this.
Yes. I am very much like a kid in a candy store with my Gemini nature of, especially when it comes to self-help healing tools.
Yeah, I relate as being another air sign as an Aquarius. Okay. So one of the things that you sort of lay out in your website is the saltwater mountain woman.
Mm,
And I want to talk about that. You say she's unflappable, unapologetic, the future, she's you and me, and her name is Hope. Why is her name Hope? Who is this woman?
mm, mm. Her name is Hope. So when I came up with that logo, it was very abstract. And my web designer, creative designer nailed it. You know, she took my ideas and sketches and then she nailed it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that encompasses everything that this means to me. And this was about hope, right? This was about coming out of an era that we're still not out of. We're shaped by that pandemic and it's still fresh. Hope was the only thing that was certain. And I love the idea that her name could be that. She symbolized it, and it's a beautiful name. So that was her name. And when I was thinking about, well, who is she? You know, she's unflappable, and not that women need to be unflappable, but hope is unflappable and unapologetic, which I believe if you relate to this, you relate to her, women need to be unapologetic. And the future, right? We know this. We know that women need to rise up. And she's you and me, meaning this is all of us. This is, as women, I see you, I hear you. That's namaste, right? The light in me sees the light in you and honors it. And we are equal, especially when we're in the water. Everything else goes out the window. And you are your most pure, most raw self. And, you know, it's like the womb. I liken the dip to being in the womb. And so this saltwater mountain woman awakening, which is our retreats for women, that is, it feels like a rebirth. And I think midlife is a rebirth, you know, and I'm not alone in that thinking. It is the other end of puberty, essentially, and another version of it, you know, and you do feel kind of like a kid again, and you feel like you have this, you're bursting into this next phase of life, and you have all this potential, and you have hope, and hope is something you can actually hang on to. You know, I think no matter where you are in your life and no matter what's happening in the world. That was what she symbolized to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful to me because, like, if someone were to ask you, I mean, you're doing very solid, like, you speak about your experience and about leading women, and then you do community gatherings, and then you document and share your own dipping, and you do the retreats. But I think to me, what this weaves in is like there's a lot more to the story. There's a lot more to you just stepping into the cold water to get the neurochemicals that you like
Right?
so much.
Exactly.
Um, it's more about how you choose to redefine yourself with that
Yeah.
simple act of taking the faith, because you're going to be shivering before, during, and after.
Mhm.
But you're not doing it alone. And even if you're at home in your own tub, you're not doing it alone. I see a lot of women like awakening into this wisdom, into these ways, as you said, and being drawn to these ways. Um, and that's what I absolutely love about what you've been bringing up in the world, is just that we have the choice to move towards something that can be healing for us. Even if it's just you go in, you hate it, and then you come back, which to me, what that's bringing up is I'm a yoga teacher too,
Mm.
in a past life, I should say,
Mhm. Me
because
too.
it's still a part of my life, but in a different way. But the very first yoga class I went to, I hated with a passion. I was like, how can people put their heads onto something they just put their feet into? Like, it made no sense
Right.
to me, but just something loosened a little bit in that first class for me. So I kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And um, similar with massage, some people have horrible experiences
Right.
with
Yeah,
that too.
that's true.
So it's a little bit about finding your own path. And I think more about, rather than saying, oh, what's this like scary thing? Perhaps what I would love the people in my life
Yeah.
to say instead is like, tell me more. Tell me more about it. How does that feel to you? And I wish that this conversation inspires that in
Yeah.
in the people listening.
I love that. Tell me more is such a beautiful phrase and a way to be a really good listener too.
Yeah.
And going, bringing someone to the water and encouraging them to trust themselves is everything in this to me. This is not about doing the Amy method or the dip down to rise up method. It is really you finding you. And that's what we don't have enough of. And that's what we're not used to that. We're not used to trusting ourselves. We're not used to confidence. Women as a culture, we're not used to that. And it's why it's very common and really normal to sort of ask, like, what should I do? How long should I do this? What are the rules? How should I breathe? What is the biggest benefit? We want the checklist. And it is so awesome. And it was easier for me, I think, because I don't like the checklist. I just want to jump in. And I think that, it's like you don't want to do midlife alone. You wouldn't want to have your first period alone. Like you wouldn't want to do all these milestones alone. You want to do them with people. And even if you're doing them alone in your backyard in a tub, you're not alone. This is ancient, right? This is being surrounded with water and salt water. I mean, salt water is the ultimate healer, right? You gargle with it, you wash things with it. It heals and and it holds you. It makes you buoyant.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned the checklist, because that is something I encounter in in the crystal healing world as well.
Mhm.
Um, like which crystal, where does it go, and this and that, and what I teach is pretty similar to what you're mentioning, uh, inspiring people to make their own connections with that realm and bringing their own wisdom.
Right. And I do understand wanting, I'm picturing myself being your client, and I could see myself saying those things. As the client, I do understand that. And I understand
And there's nothing wrong with it, right?
there's
You
nothing wrong with it. It's actually really great. It's like going to your hairstylist and, you know, them being like, well, we'll just cut it, whatever you think. And I'm like, no, what do you think? You're the professional. Please give me some answers. So I really understand and honor that people want that. And so I do like to educate and explain and I'm simply relaying the research that's been done and also my own personal experience slash unofficial research.
Yes. Speaking of research, like other than you, obviously, which we're gonna tell people how to find you, but what are some of other places or people that people can look to find, I guess, more practical information about cold water benefits and cold water how to?
Yeah. So Susanna Soberg is a Danish um, doctor. She has a PhD in metabolism, and she has done wonderful studies on cold water exposure for health, longevity, and metabolism. And she does a wonderful job of explaining the benefits of shivering. And, when you end with cold, or if you just do cold exposure and you get out, that feeling of shivering and warming your body naturally and letting it sort of do that natural warm up to a degree is the way to really stimulate your brown fat, which, is gets a little less active around after age 40. And the brown fat is brownish in color because it has the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. And really simply stated, she has explained this in other podcasts as well, and you can find her videos about it. But she explains um, that mitochondria essentially eats or uses the fat and the sugar in our blood to create heat in our body. So brown fat really helps our body stay heated. And while it does that, it's literally that act is metabolizing. So that act is your metabolism, creating heat from the fat and sugar in your blood. And that, if you imagine, it's really pretty great promise for things like preventing metabolic disease, preventing cardiovascular disease. So I love to know that. And she does a great job. She has done a great job of that. She wrote a book called Cold Water Swimming, where she explains a lot of that and the other benefits.
Yeah, and we're going to include the links there. I think I just
Perfect.
want to mention one thing about Dr. Solberg, which she sort of coined the Solberg principle, which my understanding of it is when you do cold exposure, you don't want to jump into a sauna afterwards. You kind of want to like very slowly warm up and to like widen or lengthen the benefits of the exposure.
Yes, and that will enhance the benefits. Absolutely. Yep. And if you do contrast therapy with the sauna, the idea is ending with cold.
Yeah. Uh,
Unless you're doing it at night, because the sauna can help you sleep better when you end with the heat.
yes, that's a very good point. Okay, so I want to tell our listeners how to find you and everything, but and I would love for you to explain all the different beautiful things you do. But before that, where do you see yourself in the next, I ask usually 5 years, but let's say like 1 to 2 years. And what's next for you? What's happening?
Thank you for asking. So I love to travel. So I trust the process with Saltwater Mountain Co. And I believe that it will take me in front of the right people and to the right places. I would love to speak to bigger audiences. I would love to travel to speak about this in places that just don't know about it as much. And beautiful places. There's places all over the country to dip. And there's some real good, nooks and crannies in the mountains and in the ocean, and the Great Lakes. And I think a lot about Banff up in Canada. I think a lot about the Canadian Rockies and dipping up there. I also believe so much in echoing all the great work that is being done around perimenopause, and I'm really focusing on thinking about cold water dipping specifically to help with symptoms and how it works with hormone therapy and how it works alone and how it works when you're um, going through this decline of estrogen or you're on the other side and not having periods anymore. So I'm thinking a lot about that and sharing my thoughts on that and having maybe more of the retreats be around that in particular. But I'm also getting back to my nursing roots a little bit. And I'm excited because I'm a clinical nurse director of a women's mental health portion of a mental health clinic that is opening in York, Maine. And it happened in this beautiful way, sort of reconnecting with the physician that I'm working closely with, and to be able to sort of go back but forward with all that I know now about mental health through my clients with massage therapy, and even before that with yoga, and then most recently with cold water therapy, and to really bring a modern angle to blending those things and finding the place for it in the clinical world.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that and
Yeah, you're welcome.
all the rest of this conversation. I love talking with you. How can people find out more about you, Amy, and about your beautiful free community dips in the ocean?
Thank you. So my website is saltwatermountainco.com, and I'm actually evolving it because as businesses and passion projects evolve, I want the website to reflect that. So we're working on really making my retreats and my talks and retreats and talks being the big things that I want to be doing going forward, and the community dips. So those are really the three biggies that I'll be focusing on. So that's the website. You can reach me through that. It will also have an updated email list, but phone numbers on there as well. And then social media is where I'm most frequently updating, and that's Instagram and Facebook mostly. So Instagram is Dip Down to Rise Up, and Facebook is Saltwater Mountain Co. And that I would say, I have a few things on YouTube and a few small things on TikTok, but I spend most of my time in terms of social media on Instagram.
Beautiful. So go to Deep Down to Rise Up, and I'll include those links. Thank you so much, Amy. This was wonderful. It was great to
Thank
chat.
you, Damla. I can't wait to dip with you more and to dive into your astrology. Dipping goes with anything. And
Yeah,
so when I meet people with these special gifts and other healing nature, I always want to collaborate at the least in conversation. So thank you.
definitely. Definitely. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Conversations with Healers. If this episode spoke to you in any way, please leave a review or comment, like or love it, and share it with others in your life. This is a true soul love project from my heart to yours. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and check out other episodes to listen to some extraordinary healing stories and advice. Have a beautiful and wonderful day.